You too. We're live now, Dan.
Go. There, it's a good start. Good evening again, and welcome to the Wednesday, June 24th, 2020 meeting of the East Lansing Planning Commission. Mr. Haywood, would you please call roll?
One second. Bowman.
Here.
Boyle.
Here.
Cahill.
Here.
Downs. Kusler.
Present.
Sullivan.
Here.
Watson.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
And Wolf.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. That'll move us on to item 1.2, approval of the agenda. You all received a copy of the agenda in your packet. I would entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
Move approval of today's agenda. Second.
That's been moved by Commissioner Kusler and seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Is there any discussion on that motion? Mr. Haywood? Yes, please. And
Yes, just one item of concern that we found is the item for 6.5, the modified SUP for 2200 Coolidge. That title, the special use permit, is incorrect. It should be site plan. So in order for the correction on the agenda tonight, we would just need a motion to make that change to the title on the agenda.
so just to clarify, Mr. Haywood, we're going to call that a site plan amendment.
Modified site plan.
Modified site plan. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Wolf.
So moved.
Oh, thank you.
Kusler support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Wolf and seconded by Commissioner Kusler. All those in favor of making that modification, please signify by saying aye. Let's do a voice vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed? There's no opposition and that motion passes. That brings us back to the main motion to approve the agenda, the remainder of the agenda as submitted. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed? That motion passes as well. That will bring us down to item 1.3, the approval of the minutes of the June 10th meeting of the East Lansing Planning Commission. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Kusler support.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Cahill and seconded by Commissioner Kusler. Is there any discussion on that motion? I'm seeing no hands, and so again, we'll call for a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries as well. Reminding me that I have a script that I'm to read after the roll call, so I'll go back to that now, thanking everybody for your attendance, your remote attendance, and to remind everybody that, of course, we're dealing with some different technology now, and so I'll thank you for your patience as we continue to work our way through that. I'm to remind all members of the public that you will have a chance to address the commission during public comment and during each public hearing. Each commission member will be called on individually to speak during an item. A commission member may say pass if they do not have a comment to make on that item. Commission members are reminded to state their name before speaking or making a motion, etc. All significant votes will be taken by a roll call vote. And so just to clarify for members of the public, when we get to the point in public comment in the meeting and during all the public hearings, you will be called on individually, either by your name as it shows up on the screen or the last three digits of your phone number. So moving on to committee reports, I do not believe we have any. And then on to staff reports, Mr. Haywood.
No report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4, commissioner announcements. Are there any announcements from any commissioners?
No.
I'm seeing no hands. Thank you. Then that moves us on to communications from citizens. Again, we'll now move on to the point of public comment. Each caller in our queue will have 5 minutes to address the commission. At the end of 5 minutes, you'll be placed back on mute. As I'd mentioned before, all callers will be identified by the last 3 digits of their phone number. When called upon, you will be unmuted. If you do not wish to speak when your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number have been called, please indicate so by saying pass. If you do choose to speak, we ask that you please clearly state your name and address before addressing the commission. This is not a requirement, but it does help us in our in our record keeping and minute keeping. So Mr. Parcell, if you would proceed with oral communications.
No problem. For reference, also, we will be going through this during the public hearings for tonight. So if you wish to speak during a public hearing, you will have an opportunity at that point. That being said, the caller with the last 3 digits of their phone number, 286, you are now allowed to speak. Caller 286, the floor is yours.
Michael Yasse here representing RJB Enterprises LLC. Pass for now.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits of their phone number, 744. The floor is yours.
This is David Pearson. I'm here this evening on behalf of Gateway of East Lansing on the 300 Grand River special use permit. I had sent an email, which I think you have as part of your packet, explaining the proposed use and why it is a business use. I'd be glad to address it now, or if you wish, when that matter comes up on the agenda.
It's not a public hearing, so it's, I believe, commission's preference.
Just the same, Mr. Parcell, Mr. Pearson is presenting as a representative of the applicant, so it would not be inappropriate for him to make comment at that time. I would guess I would leave it to you, Mr. Pearson, if you'd like to stick around to the end of the meeting, or if you'd like to make your comments and move on.
I will be sticking around to the end of the meeting anyway, so I'm happy to address it then. I think my email explained what our position is, and I think be glad to address questions at that time as to why we believe it's appropriate as a business use and that it's not simply an amenity which requires a modification to change this to a non-business use on the first floor of the property.
Very well.
Okay.
We'll hear from you in about half an hour.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits of their phone number, 889. The floor is yours.
Good evening. This is Chris Jerome. I have nothing to say at this time. I'm here for the special use permit extension at the old business part.
Thank you. Okay, the caller with the last 3 digits of their phone number, 705. The floor is yours.
This is Chuck Holman. I'm here on 300 Grand, and I'll pass.
Thank you. The caller with the last 3 digits of their phone number, 833. The floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Abby Taitaki, and I'm the current president of the Pinecrest Neighborhood Association Board of Directors. I'm calling in regards to item 6.5 on the agenda, Coolidge Court, and to relay what I've heard from residents living along Coolidge, Rolling Brook, Redleaf, Green Tree, and Ramblewood, who are most affected directly by Coolidge Court development. It's clear from the historical documentation that residents have provided to me and to the commission that the developer placed the restrictions on the development against Sunday hours because they knew that without them, the development would not have been approved in the first place. So it doesn't feel very city governance-y to put it this way, but they made a promise to the neighborhood and they keep coming back trying to break it. The majority of residents that I've heard from are strongly opposed to Sunday hours. Some of them sent this to you all in writing. Many more have called me just to say just that. I've only heard from 3 residents, and I saw one more in your packet, who are in favor of Sunday hours, if it would mean that the empty storefronts would be filled. But based on conversations I've had with the residents, my suggestion to the commission would be to reject the application. If the commission decides to approve the application, I would insist that they implement the changes suggested by Joseph and Elaine Reynolds' letter to the commission, asking for a restriction on business hours Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. through 9 p.m. Restrict Monday through Saturday business hours from 7 a.m. through 9 p.m. Prohibit dumpster pickup between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And something else that I heard in my conversations would be to prohibit landscaping services between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 a.m. or 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. I would also like clarification and assurance around the language that restricts in the restrictions that states that the property shall not be used for commercial cooking or baking or of food for consumption or sale either on or off premises. This shall include but not be limited to the prohibition of any fast food type restaurants such as McDonald's or Burger King. When we met with George Brookover and Jill Green at the development, they mentioned that some businesses that have expressed interest in occupancy included smoothie shops and coffee shops, and nearly everyone that I spoke to was strongly opposed to any food-related businesses going in. So I just would like clarification as to whether or not the language as written prohibits it, or if there's a loophole. And if there's a loophole, we would request that it be closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Parcell, could you hold on for a sec?
Yes.
I failed to clarify earlier, and in as much as the commission is happy to take comments from citizens, this being that particular part of the meeting, I often remind people that if you have a specific comment to make on an item it's a matter of public hearing, that we generally ask that you wait until that item is on the agenda. So my bad for not bringing that up earlier. Again, you're certainly welcome to make the comments at this point. That is the intention of this particular agenda item. But we often ask that in order to keep conversation sort of to the point at hand, that if you have a comment to make about an item that's a public hearing, that we'll ask that you wait until that item is up on the agenda shortly. Please proceed, Mr. Purcell.
Not a problem. I see one person with their hand up right now with the initials SS. So we're going to be starting there, but then from there on out, the callers have their names listed. I will be calling them out by their initials and starting their time at that point. So the attendee with the initials SS, the floor is yours. You are muted currently.
I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Now? This is Steve Schaefer. I have an item on the agenda, 6.1, and we did not get a Zoom password, so we're not able to enter in if there's any dialogue on 6.1.
As the attendee, we will just allow you permission to talk during your agenda item, and then you'll be able to converse with the Planning Commission at that point.
Perfect.
If you don't have any public comment, you can say pass, and we can keep going.
I pass.
Thank you. Okay, the attendee with the initials AT, you are allowed to talk. I believe that this was just the caller we just had, but some people aren't here twice.
Yep, it's me again, pass.
Thank you. Okay, the caller with the initials AS, the floor is yours. You are muted. If you have any comment.
Thank you. My name is Anthony Silagi. I'm representing Green Peak Industries, the applicant for 3315, and listed as item 6.2. And at this time, I'll pass and reserve comments when the item is called. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe those three have spoke in the calls. The attendee with the initials JG, the floor is now yours. You are muted.
I'll pass.
Thank you. The caller with the initials NS, the floor is now yours. You are muted as well.
Nancy Siddell, representing Kappa Kappa Gamma, occupancy license, pass.
Thank you. I believe that I have gotten everyone. There are some people that called in after that, I believe. So if any last public comment comes up, if you could please use your Zoom function to raise your hand, that would be appreciated. Other than that, oh, here we go. Caller with the initial GB. There you go. Thank you.
It's George Brookover appearing on behalf of Marcorr on agenda item 6.5, and I'd like to defer until the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I believe that that is all of your public comment. Again, if I missed anyone, please raise your hand at this time. They kind of shift around as you allow them to talk, so it makes it a little difficult to track, and some people are there twice, but I believe that's back to you, Chair Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Parcell. I actually see one person on the list here that we didn't hear from, and to be honest with you, I don't know how to raise my hand. So may I call on this individual?
Yes.
Your initials are M.Y.
Okay.
Jake might be able to move you to the top.
Yep.
Hello? Yeah, so Michael Yase, I called in, last three digits, 286. I thought you had to call in to be able to public comment.
All right. All right, thank you.
Just wanted to be thorough. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, then that will, and we did receive a number of written communications for this meeting, but they were all associated with either public hearings or old business. And so we'll get to those when we reach those items on the agenda. That will move us on to item 6.1, our first public hearing of the evening. This is a site plan and special use permit, an application from CA-East Lansing Incorporated for the property at 1234 East Grand River Avenue to create a recreational marijuana retail establishment. Mr. Haywood?
Yes, thank you. So this is a proposed special use permit for an adult use marijuana retailer. The applicant received a special use permit for a medical marijuana provisioning center by City Council in April of 2019 and was modified in February of this year. The modification in February reconfigured the interior floor plan, where before they were proposing to only use the first 2 floors. They're now proposing to use all 3 floors, but only partially on the 2nd and 3rd floor. The 2nd floor, they're proposing to remove a substantial part of the floor to create a vaulted ceiling from the 1st through the 2nd floor. The 3rd floor will only a portion of that will be used for their fulfillment services, and that way they're still under the 4,500 square feet limitation due to their non-conforming status. The changes from the special use permit that was granted last April include moving the sidewalk from the road to the building from the east side of the building to the west side of the building to create more room to widen the driveway to achieve the required 18 feet. They also made minor changes to the front exit area, and the rear entrance was they extended their slope to address barrier-free concerns. And with that, I would take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Haywood? Commissioner Wolf? And you're muted.
Yeah, on page 8 of the staff report, it's actually the very last sentence, says the applicant is pursuing a state license for medical marijuana provisioning center. Is that really correct? It implies that they do not have their medical marijuana license yet, even though we approved their special use permit a year ago.
Yeah, so I think the way it works with the state is that they're the last ones in the door in terms of licensing. So in fact, I think they have to get their certificate of occupancy before they issue a license. And this is the key. This is what we've seen with all the provisioning centers that are moving forward in this direction. So I believe that is accurate, that they're still pursuing that. And I also believe that it's not long after they get certificate of occupancy that they can get their license. They work with the state in tandem through this process to get to that point. But I think that is right.
So it would be correct to say that they are pursuing their medical marijuana license and also their adult use license simultaneously at this point.
True, yes.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Haywood? Yes, Vice Chair Boyle.
They can't be both, right? The facility has to either be a retail or medical marijuana.
No, we require that in order to become a marijuana retailer, they have to also be licensed as a provisioning center.
I understand that, but can they operate both out of the same facility?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Wolf.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I have a whole set or series of questions along the lines of what Commissioner Boyle just asked. And I think I'm gonna try asking them of the applicant first, and perhaps with Mr. Haywood joining in if he has something different to say. But for me, and I think for a lot of people, there's enough confusion about all these rules that there's a lot of things I'd like to see cleared up for the public and for the media that might be watching and so forth. So I'm expecting to do that a little bit later here.
That's fine, fair enough. Any other questions for Mr. Haywood? All right, I'm seeing no hands, and so I'll invite the applicant to, to come forward. Or Mr. Parcell, if you could sort of escort them to the front of the room.
Not a problem. The applicant, the floor is yours.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody at the city for working with us. It's been a long process with the state, but we have received our pre-qualification. We have also put forward the necessary applications for getting the adult use and the medical with this process. And then Mr. Haywood is absolutely correct. The state does not issue the final licenses until the inspections are passed with security, cameras, and all of that good stuff. We are currently licensed in a number of other municipalities. We are open currently in Kalkaska, and we have our provisioning or our cultivation licenses in line and already approved at the state. So if you have any further questions, we look forward to talking to you about it. But one of the changes is originally we went through medical, we were approved, and then the city approved recreational, and we had to file those licenses as well. So we made a few interior floor changes to allow for a medical area and a adult use area. And those floor plan changes were approved at the last meeting that we had at the city. Pre-COVID.
Thank you. Just by way of clarification, I saw that was Mr. Schaefer. My screen said that your name was Spencer, but you said that.
I'm using my son's phone.
Okay, so
He's
you're
more technology driven than I am. So
is it Steven Schaefer? I think this.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Steven.
That'll just help with with our minutes. So appreciate that. If you'd stick close, I understand there'll be some questions coming from at least one of our commissioners. Any questions for Mr. Schaefer? Commissioner Wolf.
Yes, my first one was going to be clarifying the requirement for both licenses from the state, but you've already done that. My understanding is that both the state license and the East Lansing special use permit are tied to a property, not to an individual or a company, or is that correct?
I would ask David to chime in on that, but I believe it's to the applicant or the company and the address.
Yeah, I can't speak to the license. I'm not sure I know exactly how that functions at a state level. I thought they were tied to a business and a location, and had a lengthy, exhaustive review of individuals and their finances and all of that. So I think that's all tied together from their perspective. I don't know to what extent, but the special use permit is issued for a use in a specific, maybe a specific site plan that goes with it, and that will follow the land. So if, for example, this company were to be bought out by another company or to go out of business, it could be picked up by another company as long as they operate under the same conditions of approval that were approved. Not like, like any other business, like a drive-through. Different banks can come and go and assume the same SUP.
Yes, okay, so that is exactly what I meant. I do understand that the applicant has to get the state license, but it is specific to a property for that applicant. And then our special use permit applies to that property only. Okay. And so in the instance where they have both licenses, both licenses and both special use permits, it will always be for the same property. So I have a question then. My understanding is that you must have a medical license from the state first before you can get the retail license. And then that you must keep that medical license active throughout the time that you are operating your adult use. But my question is, are you required in the case of a provisioning center to continue to sell medical marijuana? Or could they simply discontinue selling it?
From our standpoint, we pay two separate licensing fees. I would assume that you could drop one of them and keep adult use. I'm not sure what the ordinance in East Lansing specifies, but you could do one or the other or both. But it is definitely our intent to maintain that medical license as well as the AU license.
Okay, our special use permit definitely does not require you to continue to sell the medical marijuana. But my question was whether the state does, but I guess you've answered that well enough. So then once you have both licenses and you're operating on the one property, you are required to treat the two products or streams of products as two entirely separate channels, correct?
Yes, they're actually displayed in separate areas, and they're also labeled differently. All medical product has to be labeled as medical product and can only be sold as medical product. That product is not allowed to go into the adult use market. And that is how we will maintain our shop for sure.
And that's how it is through the entire channel, correct? If something starts out at a medical marijuana grower, it has to go through a medical marijuana processor, a transporter, and so forth.
That's correct.
Now, in some cases, those will have dual licenses as well. Is that correct? You could have a transporter who has a license for both medical marijuana and adult use, and they could transport both of them?
I believe that they can. I'm not a transporter, so I'm not as, we're not allowed to hold that license, so I'm not as in tune with what the state regulation is, but I know that the transporters that we deal with will transport both AU and medical. I don't think there is a, I don't think there are two different things with a transporter. Same thing with a tester. If they know that it's medical, there's certain protocols that they run the test for medical and certain protocols that are run and required for adult use.
Okay, I'm pretty sure they are separate licenses from the state. I recall from looking through the adult use regulations, I'm pretty sure there's a separate approval for transporters who want to add the adult use to what they're transporting. But all right, thank you. For a time, maybe 6 months ago, Lara or MRA, I believe, relaxed the rules to allow a transfer, I think, of medical marijuana over to the adult use. Can you confirm that? And is that still in effect? Or
the way that it works is if it is not caregiver product, because that's coming to an end, because caregiver product was not tested. But if you cultivate and sell to a provisioning center and that material is in their vault for 30 days or longer, there is a transfer of a certain percentage that can occur into adult use, but they want to make sure that the medical use is satisfied. So you just can't transfer all of it. There's only a portion. And I believe that's under the emergency rules right now, just to be able to kind of balance supply. But I think eventually that will go away when the permanent rules are adopted.
okay, and that can happen only at the provisioning center, not at any other step along the line.
That's correct. That's when that makes that product, medical product, eligible for adult use.
All right, perfect. That's a good explanation of something I didn't fully understand. Okay, when you get actually into the store, when you actually get to a transaction between the customer and your business, if we look at what happens in a medical transaction versus the retail or adult use, and how it works, there's two differences that, or maybe three, that I know of, and I want to know if you can confirm them and tell me if there are others. First, I guess most obviously, for the medical purchase, the user or the customer must have a state card authorizing them to purchase medical marijuana, that they have a medical need for it. Second, my understanding is that medical marijuana, or let me put it the other way, that the adult use marijuana will generally cost more. And that is because there is an extra tax on it being not being a medical product. Can you confirm whether those two differences are correct?
Yes. Well, I'll answer your first question and then I'll move to the excise tax. The medical purchase is done through Metric, which is the state authorized software. And in that software, it will match up the medical card. So if somebody is coming in to purchase, when they first come into the store, their identification is checked and validated, and whether they have a medical card or if it's an adult use purchase. If it's a medical card, Metric tracks that, and that purchase is tracked separately under medical. So we're able to run Metric and look at all of our medical transactions. Those transactions are only, they're taxed at a lower rate, a sales tax, And then when you move into the adult use product that is allowed to be entered into Metric, Metric has an adult use side of their program, which is separated from the medical program. And that one requires the state ID, needs to be validated, date of birth. So all the information, all the fields have to be filled in before it will authorize you to do that transaction. And that transaction is tracked by the state. And all adult use transactions have an additional 10% excise tax that is associated with the purchase.
And those are also subject to the state sales tax, is that correct?
Yes, that will get sales tax and an excise tax for adult use. Medical only gets the sales tax, not the excise.
The medical pays a sales tax?
Medical pays a small, yes, I think it's about 3%.
Oh, okay.
I'd have to check, but there is a sales tax that's paid on a medical transaction.
Okay.
But not an excise tax.
Yeah, I was thinking it was exempt from that. Are there any other differences you would point out as to what happens in the transaction?
No, the transaction's essentially the same, but ID is key, age is key, medical cards are key. So we look at all of those on all these transactions, and they're all entered in and tracked in our computer.
Okay, and so the computer takes care of all of that. One of the basic requirements is that these two sales operations are virtually separate businesses. Is that an okay way to characterize it?
Yeah, I guess you could characterize it like going into a drugstore and having the pharmacy counter and then having your over-the-counter drugs, except for the taxes that are assessed to it. But they are distinctly separated, and an adult use patient cannot purchase any medical product, only adult use approved product by the state.
Okay, and then I think my last question for now anyway, right now in the initial period for adult use marijuana, the MRA decided to grant the adult use licenses only to businesses that already have medical marijuana licenses. And they indicated that was going to be for a period of, I believe it was 3 years. Is the expectation that practice will actually end, and then so a few years from now they will accept applications for adult use facilities from those who do not have prior approval for medical sales?
I don't believe that they're, can you just rephrase that question? I was getting a text from my attorney while you were, he was correcting me that the sales tax is 6% on the medical goods, and I was looking over, but give me the short version of what you just asked, and I'm trying to juggle another phone here, so
yeah,
I apologize.
While they're starting out the sales for adult use, MRA decided to issue the adult use licenses only to those who already have medical licenses.
Right, and I believe that was, you said 3 year, I thought it was a 2 year period. There still is going to be a cap because the municipalities are really the gatekeepers. So if you decide at some time down the road to add more individuals, yes, that period may expire, and people that didn't have a medical license may be eligible for those as well.
So we can.
The attorney just emailed me, said state requirement to have med license first ends November 20th, 21. That's what the state law says. So after December 2021, people that don't have medical licenses can just apply for the rec license, or I would assume a medical license as well would still be available for them.
All right, thank you. That's all
Sure.
of my questions for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolf and Mr. Schaefer. Any other questions for the applicant, for Mr. Schaefer? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, and so we'll, at this point, we'll open up the public hearing for this particular application. Mr. Parcell, if you would proceed.
Yes, not a problem. Going down the list, the caller with the last 3 digits, 052, the floor is yours. Caller 052, the floor is yours if you want to comment on this public hearing.
No, I don't. Thank you for asking.
No problem. Thank you. Caller 286, the floor is now yours to comment on this public hearing.
Pass, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller 292, the floor is now yours to comment on this public hearing.
No, I don't. Thank you for asking.
No problem. Thank you. Caller 697, the floor is yours to speak regarding this public hearing.
Thank you. This is Lance Bouldry from Dykema, counsel for the petitioner here in this case. I do not have any additional questions other than the comment for Mr. Schaefer that he probably doesn't need his attorney anymore because he nailed all the questions from Commissioner Wolf. If there are any others, though, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much. If there are no questions, caller with the last 3 digits, 744, the floor is now yours.
I have nothing on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits, 889, the floor is now yours.
I have nothing on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits, 705, the floor is now yours.
Pass.
Thank you. I'm now going into initials. If I hit anyone for a second time, I'm sorry about that. Caller with the initials AT, the floor is now yours. You are muted. Thank you. All right, caller with the initials AS, the floor is now yours.
I have no comments. Pass. Thank you.
Caller with the initials CJ, the floor is now yours. Oh, okay. CJ, the floor is now yours. If you have any comment, you are muted.
Nothing on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Just 1 second. Okay, caller with the initial CH, the floor is now yours. CH, you're muted. Last call for comment, caller CH. Okay. Caller with the initials GB, the floor is now yours.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the initials JG, the floor is now yours. You are muted. JG. It's your last call. Caller with the initials JG. Thank you. Caller with the initials MY. The floor is now yours.
Pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the initials NS. The floor is now yours.
Pass.
Thank you. Okay, I am going to unmute caller 697 as they are the attorney on behalf of the representative, and I am sending it back to you, Chair Bowman. You're muted.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Are there any questions for either Mr. Schaefer or Mr. Bouldry before we return this back to the commission? Did Mr. Bolger have additional comments he wanted to make?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing and we'll return this back to the commission. Any directives or questions for staff?
I mean, it seems like this fits all of, I mean, there was no questions, no comments. It seems to fit everything in the staff report. I don't know. I'm inclined to be aggressive about suspending rules because we've been on pause for so long. And I want to allow a lot of these businesses to jump in. Now, I'm not prepared to do that today. If someone else is, that would be great, but I'm not prepared to suspend the rules today. But I would like us to get into that thought process when the applicant clearly hits everything that they need to hit, and we don't have additional questions or concerns. I would like us to get into the habit of just trying to push these things along a little bit more. I know that's a little aggressive. We have rules for a reason, but at the same time, this is a pretty peculiar situation, a pretty rare circumstance, and anything we can do to push the envelope and allow these businesses to take occupancy and start operating, I think is going to better our community, regardless of the industry in the sector. So with that, I'll say, I'm not going to suspend the rules. I'm not going to make that motion, but I've got no concerns with this at all.
Thank you, Commissioner Kusler. Any other either questions for our staff or Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, I think on most of the new business we have tonight, we don't have enough information in the staff report about conditions and so forth. So it's particularly not an option right now, even though it will be a good idea to do for others.
I agree with you.
So
thank you, Commissioner Wolf. I absolutely agree with you. That's why I couldn't move on it today. But you know, with that direction to staff, if we could start maybe leading toward that, I think it would, again, it would show the community the right thing. I'm not saying to push anything through that we have to discuss, but in situations like this, it would be nice to have all that on paper so we can move forward a little bit faster.
Vice Chair Boyle.
Yeah, I would agree, particularly with these particular matters, which are a special use permit and site plans that have already been approved for medical marijuana dispensaries. And now they're asking to be approved for adult use, and they're not really changing anything. City Council's already approved them. We've already approved them. I think this is a situation where if we had all of the conditions that we need spelled out, it's a situation where we could, I certainly could support suspending the rules.
Mr. Haywood, I saw your hand, I think.
No, I think it was summarized well. I was going to make a similar point, so thank you.
Okay, thank you then. Seeing no more hands, I'll just say that we'll see this in an upcoming meeting. And we'll see the applicants then. Thank you. That will move us on to item 6.2. This is a site plan and special use permit and application from Green Peak Industries LLC, doing business as Green Peak Innovations for the property at 3315 Coolidge Road to create a recreational marijuana retail establishment.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
All right, Ms. Schmidt, I had bad notes here.
I thought I'd help you out there. This particular 8-acre site houses almost complete 3,445 square foot single-story building approved by City Council on March 26, 2019 for a medical marijuana provisioning center. The site has 40 parking spaces and 4 bicycle parking spaces to accommodate staff and any clients. It's located north of Water Tower Office Development and south of 3G Sports. Northeast of the site is a single-family residential neighborhood. The property is slightly over 8 acres and lightly wooded. It also has wetlands along Coolidge Road and west of the proposed parking lot. The applicant is working with the city engineer now for the wetlands mitigation. The property is zoned B4 as it is the property to the south and the northwest. To the north, the property is zoned OIP. Directly west, the property is zoned RA, and directly east, the property is zoned B5 and B8. The applicant is proposing to open an adult use marijuana retail establishment like the previous applicant at the subject location. The applicant is not proposing changes at all to the approved site plan or to the floor plan. The medical marijuana from the Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center that was approved by council. The applicant continues to work with city engineer on all of the items listed in the letter that was provided in the review packet. There were no concerns by fire or police at this time. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Ms. Schmidt? Commissioner Wolf?
Yes, I just wanted to let you know that the zoning analysis, the usual zoning analysis is missing from this site plan. The other ones on this topic all have the standard one-page zoning analysis.
Very good.
Any other questions for Ms. Schmidt? I guess by way of clarification, there was an item in the staff report regarding there's a residential structure that's still located on the property. And I understand that you've not received a response, but is the concern that, I mean, I realize that the ordinance says that the establishment should not be operated out of a residence or a residential structure. Does that mean that the residential structure can't be retained on the site?
That's correct. That will have to be demolished.
Could the lot be split?
The lot,
at least in theory,
could be split in theory, but then it wouldn't be able to be operated as a medical marijuana operation if it had a property that was used as a residential property. So.
Yeah, thanks. Again, I presume that you're still waiting for a response. That's what the staff report said.
Correct.
Other questions for Ms. Schmidt? Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, to clarify that, it's the report said that there was a request to the city attorney about this issue. So was that his opinion that having the residents on the property was enough to disqualify them?
Correct. It would.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Schmidt? Okay, I'm seeing none then. I will invite the applicant to come forward. Mr. Parcell, if you would please escort them to a speaking position. Thank you.
I don't remember the last 3 digits of their phone number. Can you please raise your hand right now? There we go. Sorry, I have notes. It's more difficult to follow. The applicant, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Anthony Siladi. I represent Green Peak in this. Green Peak is the premium cannabis company, and they are the largest vertically integrated cannabis company in the state of Michigan. We pride ourselves on our professionalism and how we operate. We have various locations throughout the state, and some of them would be in Ann Arbor, Lansing, and Traverse City. In fact, in Lansing, there are similar establishments on Penn and Saginaw, and then also on Cedar Street if you wanted to view the aesthetics of the building. The aesthetics of the buildings are exceptional. I've been in other planning commission meetings in Portage and Ann Arbor, and even in the Traverse City locations. They describe our buildings as the gold standard as to what they want. And that's what we're bringing here is the highest possible standards in operating this business and the aesthetics of the building. With regards to this application, we've already applied and received approval for the medical, and there is going to be no change in the building or the structure. And so, as has already been laid out, the building is a beautiful, over 3,000 square foot, single-story building. I want to point out that it has a large parking area. It's on a beautiful piece of property. It's aesthetically pleasing to the surrounding businesses. And essentially, that's the gist of it. I'm open for any kind of questions that you may have, and I welcome those as well. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen.
Any questions for Mr. Is it Silagi?
Yep, Silagi.
Silagi, Mr. Silagi? I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
I am. Commissioner Wolf.
Yes, I wanted to ask Mr. Silagi if he heard my questions to the previous applicant and if he would add anything to those answers or have any comment about those issues.
I did, and I appreciate the opportunity. In some, I would adopt those responses. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on what Green Peak does with regards to the process in which we utilize the med and the adult use. When a individual arrives at our location, we have a front foyer that is segregated from the rest of the establishment, in which they come in and they have to, if it's a medical, then they have to produce their medical ID as well as their driver's license. Those are scanned in, and we use a point of service program in which to capture that as well as their photograph. And so a profile is created for them. And then they're allowed into the rest of the establishment as a med patient. When they do select their products, the butt tender will again then match up their license and their ID with what is on the computer and what's been entered on the computer. And that is done every single time they come in thereafter. So we have that information, and it is uploaded to Metric, which is the state program that keeps track of all of the information and the purchases that are made. With regards to adult use, the situation is about the same. It's just we don't scan in the med card, and we don't take as much personal information. However, we do verify the necessary and statutory and regulatory information that is necessary for the purchase to be made for every single purchase. So we do pride ourselves in our professionalism and strict adherence to the rules and regulations. I think that was the only one I wanted to comment about. But for the most part, everything that was said so far and presented by the prior applicant, we would adopt as well. I really appreciate the time. If you have any other questions.
Any other questions for Mr. Silagi? All right, thank you. Then at this time, I'll open up the public hearing for this application. Mr. Parcell.
Not a problem. Caller with the last 3 digits of their phone number, 052. The floor is yours to speak on this application.
No comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits, 286. The floor is yours.
Pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits of their number, 292. The floor is yours.
I pass.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits, 744. The floor is yours.
Pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits, 889. The floor is yours.
Pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits, 705. The floor is yours.
Pass.
Thank you. Moving on to people with the initials. Caller with the initials AT. The floor is yours.
Pass.
Thank you. Caller with the initials CJ, the floor is yours. I have to promote you to panelist again. There you go. You're muted.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you. Now, caller with the initials CH, the floor is yours. CH, the floor is yours. You're muted. Going a third time. Thank you. Caller with the initials GB, the floor is yours.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the initials JG, the floor is yours.
I'll pass, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the initials MY, the floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the initials NS, the floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you very much. Chair Bowman, back to you. You're muted.
We'll return this back. Thank you. Return this back to the commission. If there are no further questions for the applicant, are there any directives or questions remaining for staff? I'm seeing no hands, and so we'll thank the applicant for your time, and we'll see this at a future meeting. Thank you very much. That'll move us on to item 6.3, site plan and special use permit. This is an application from RJB Enterprises, LLC, for the property at 1950 Merritt Road to create a recreational marijuana retail establishment.
I believe this is Jake.
Yeah, I've got Jake on my notes. Yep.
Sorry, when I pulled it up in iCompass, it did not see me. Okay, so this is the existing structure at 1950 Merritt Road. It was approved last fall for a medical marijuana provisioning center special use permit from the city. It is not, they're now applying for a adult use provisioning center special use permit. There will be no changes, I believe, to the hours of operation, number of employees, traffic generated, or parking spaces on site from what I saw, I believe. The SUP was modified to expand the facilities into the basement for storage, a break room, office area, safe, and budroom in October of last fall. The retail floor will take up the first floor of the building on site. And other than that, I think it adheres pretty closely to what was involved in the previous application. So I can take questions or comments now.
Questions for Mr. Parcell? Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, there was one thing on page 3 that caught my eye under the staff report. Under traffic access, it says the applicant expects an average of approximately 100 patients per day to visit the site. Now, this is an application for adult use marijuana, so I would suspect maybe that was a holdover from language for their medical permit. But then it caused me to think, well, if they're opening this up to adult use, aren't they likely to have more, let's call them customers, than they would have if they were just a medical facility? So I guess I will probably ask the applicant about that, but I'm also wondering, it's probably not enough to justify a new staff report, but, or I mean, I'm sorry, a traffic study. Maybe at least the staff report should be edited in some way.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to locate this on page 3 of the staff report, you said?
Yep, it's A3 on that page towards the bottom.
Oh, okay.
The heading is traffic access.
Yep, sorry. I have the PDF pulled up because my internet's a little slow with everything going on.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
I don't think it's significant in terms of whether we allow this or not, but it caught my eye as being a little bit inconsistent.
Okay, noted. And the applicant has raised his hand. I'm going to unmute him right now in case he would want to elaborate more.
Sure.
Yes, sir. So that is a clerical mistake on our part. My apologies. The traffic study at the intersection of Merritt Road and Hazlitt Road sees a daily volume of roughly 14,062 vehicles. The patient expectations is going to be hovering around 100, and we would not necessarily expect more than that to double with full customers for adult use access.
I'm not quite sure I understood that. You said it might perhaps double. It would no more than double.
Our expectation at this point is that it would no more than double.
All right. So maybe we could get that into the staff report. Thanks.
Yes, no problem.
Any other questions for Mr. Parcell? And then we'll ask Mr. Yese if he has anything else to add. Any other questions for Mr. Parcell? I'm seeing none. Mr. Yese, since you're at the mic, is there anything you'd like to add to that presentation?
No, I just wanted to echo what most everybody has already said to this point. Thank you for your time. And for the minutes, the last name is Yassay. We look forward to opening just so we can give you a little bit of an update of where we're at in the process. We're currently at the stage in the medical license where we are looking to schedule the inspection by the MRA and BSA. So once that takes place, and the MRA is not conducting any inspections during this week, so hopefully we get in on the schedule at some point next week. At that time, we'll be able to pay the licensing fee and receive the state license. Once we have the state license and go through this process of the meetings with the Planning Commission and the City Council, we'll be able to have a few more inspections and then finish the application for the adult use recreational license from the state.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Wool has a question for Mr. Yese.
Yeah, I wanted to repeat the question I asked at the last applicant, and that is if you heard my questions on the first application and you want to add anything about I was asking the licensing and operational aspects.
Absolutely. One thing that I did want to point out is on the medical side, the sales limits for the day for a patient is 2.5 ounces of marijuana product. That goes up slightly with edibles and such, but we will be strictly adhering to those rules and inputting them into metric to ensure that they do not cross any daily or monthly limits. Yep.
Commissioner Wool, please continue.
That raises the question, is there a limit for the adult use daily sales per customer?
Yes, sir. 2.5 ounces.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? I'm seeing no hands, and so this time we'll open up the public hearing for this application. Mr. Parcell?
Not a problem. Caller with the last 3 digits of their phone number, 052. The floor is yours.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits of their number, 286. The floor is yours.
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 3 digits of their number, 292. The floor is yours. Caller 292.
Pass.
Thank you. Caller with the last three digits, 744. The floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last three digits, 889. The floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last three digits, 705. The floor is yours.
Pass.
Thank you. Caller with the initials AT. The floor is yours.
Pass.
Thank you. Caller with the initials CH. The floor is yours. Initials CH. The floor is yours. One more time. CH. The floor is yours. Thank you. Caller with the initials GB. The floor is yours.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the initials JG. The floor is yours.
Pass for now, thank you.
Thank you. And caller with the initials NS. The floor is yours. NS. More NS. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair Bowman.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant or for staff? I will return this to the commission. Is there any questions or questions of staff or the applicant? All right, I'm seeing no hands being raised, and so we will see this at a later meeting. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Yase.
Thank you.
We'll move us on to item 6.4. This is a modified special use permit application from Delta Gamma House Corporation for the property at 605 M.A.C Avenue to allow the addition of 3 beds or occupants, 3 beds and occupants in the existing facility. The subject property is zoned RM32 City Center Multifamily Residential District. And Ms. Schmidt.
Thank you. The house is a 3-story brick multiple family structure. It currently houses 46 persons. Property is zoned RM32 City Center Multiple Family, as is the area along M.A.C Avenue, which is generally zoned similarly to the north and south, as the street contains many Greek houses and some single family homes that are rental properties. To the west and east, not along M.A.C, the properties are zoned R2 medium density single family residential. This is largely single family residential area that has been converted to rental properties. The applicant is interested in increasing their occupancy by 3 persons in the existing house without changes to the house or the current parking situation. The house currently has 22 bedrooms. Each of those bedrooms, based on the requirements for size and occupancy through the building department, of all 22, all but one of those 22 can meet the requirement to have 3 persons in the bedrooms. None of them can have 4 persons. We also included in the packet into the report pretty substantial review of the parking situation using an aerial, if Rebecca can pull that up. The existing site, the sorority house, includes a small house to the west, which actually has some parking. It has 4 parking spaces for the sorority and 3 for the people that live in the house. We also, to the north, you can see there are 8 parking spaces to the property just to the north at 617 M.A.C. This property also has parking to the north side of that house that's along the driveway and within the garage for the house requirement. With the variance that was granted back many years ago in 1974, they were granted 16 parking space variance. The required parking if we looked at just the parking requirements for that number of rooms and number of persons in a sorority, it would come to 25 persons. With the 16 person or car or parking space variance and the parking allowance, it still meets the requirements for the code. But if we went straight without the variance, it would only be short 2 parking spaces. The staff has received reviews from police and they have no concerns. Housing and building also have no concerns at this time. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Ms. Schmidt? Commissioner Wolf?
Maybe I have this wrong, but I thought I understood that in order to achieve their occupancy, they intended to have 4 residents in more than 1 room. Is that not correct?
No, they're aware that they can't have 4 in any of the rooms, so they have the ability to adjust that. They would not be able to have 4 in any of the rooms, so they were informed that none of the rooms meet that requirement, so they would have to put them in one of the other rooms that are available for 3.
And they think they can still, well, let me ask the other question. That at the beginning of the staff report, it says that they're requesting 49. Is that correct?
49 total, correct.
The suggested motion at the bottom of page 5 says they want to increase the occupancy from 44 to 46. So I wasn't sure if that meant...
That's a typo. It should be 46 to 49. In 2011, they changed the requirement, or they changed their parking from 44 to 46. So I'm
okay. I see. Okay. All right. So I guess I hope the applicant, when they speak, will tell us about how they're going to arrange this without the ability for multiple 4-person rooms.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions from Ms. Schmidt? All right, then I would like the applicant to come forward and perhaps address Commissioner Wolf's question and take other questions.
The applicant could raise their hand so I can pull them up. That would be appreciated. Thank you very much. The applicant, you now have permission to speak.
Good evening. We have several rooms that are double rooms now, and we could add, because of the square footage, 1 person in each one of those rooms. So there are 3 rooms on the 2nd floor. We would add 1 person to each one of those rooms for the occupancy to increase. That's why we needed it increased. So they do fit the criteria for the city having 3 persons in each of those 3 rooms. We have currently we have 2 twin beds. We will put a bunk bed and then 1 twin bed in those rooms, so it won't take up any more floor space.
Excuse me, just to clarify, my screen says your name is Nikki Saad. Is that correct?
My name is Nancy Sadal. She used her phone.
Fine. I thought you had said a different name when you were speaking initially, but the initials are the same, and I thought maybe.
That's a coincidence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Wolf, does that help clarify? It sounds like 3 2-bedroom rooms are now going to be 3 3-bedroom rooms.
Yes, sir.
Other questions from Ms. Sadel? All right, then. At this time, I'll open the public hearing for this item. Mr. Parcell.
Not a problem. Starting with caller with the last 3 digits, 292. The floor is yours. Caller with the last 3 digits, 292.
I'll open the public hearing for this item.
292, last call. Thank you. Caller with the last three digits, 744. The floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last three digits, 889. The floor is yours.
Please, I'll just say, please grant us.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you very much. And caller with the last three digits of their number, 705. The floor is yours. $705.
Pass.
Thank you. Now on to initials. Caller with the initials AT. The floor is yours.
Pass.
Thank you. Caller with the initials CJ. I am promoting you to panelist, and the floor is yours. You are muted. Caller CJ.
I'm sorry about that. Pass, thank you.
Thank you very much. Caller with the initials CH. The floor is yours. CH. Last call, CH. Thank you. Caller with the initials GB. The floor is yours.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the initials JG. The floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you. And finally, caller with the initials MY. The floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair Bowman.
Are there any remaining questions for the applicant or for staff? All right, then with the pleasure of the commission then.
What happens now?
I move that we suspend the rules and make action on this tonight.
Commissioner Wolf, second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Kusler and seconded by Commissioner Wolf that the rules be suspended and that the commission act on this matter this evening. Is there any discussion on that motion? Commissioner Kusler?
I think this is pretty straightforward. I mean, again, the staff report covers it all. I'm impressed with their resourcefulness in parking, finding on and off-site parking. Obviously, the sorority has been in that location for a very long time. And I really see no reason why we wouldn't be moving forward with that. So with that, I move that we recommend approval to City Council for the special use permit for those following reasons: that parking has been managed and it's an operating sorority for a number of years, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Hold on, I appreciate that. Let's vote on this first motion though. Thanks. Any other discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? All right, seeing none. Mr. Haywood, could we please have a roll call vote?
Absolutely. Bowman,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Kusler,
Yep.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Williams
Yes.
and Wolf.
Yes.
As unanimous, motion carries.
The motion carries. Commissioner Kusler.
I'll repeat my motion. I move to recommend approval to City Council for the special use permit based on their long operating record and their ability to source parking, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
And just by way of clarification, the staff report states 44 to 46. I presume you mean
46 to 49.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there a second to that motion?
Cahill, support.
Moved by Commissioner Kusler and seconded by Commissioner Cahill to recommend to City Council the increased occupancy of the house from 44 to 46 persons. Is there any discussion on that motion, Commissioner Kusler? Any further discussion, I suppose? Anyone else? Any discussion on that motion? Very well. Call for a roll call vote, please, Mr. Haywood.
Bowman,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Kusler,
Yes. Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
and Wolf.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And I thank the applicants for their time, and this will be heard by City Council at one of their upcoming meetings. Well, best of luck.
I'm gonna call Lori.
I see your hand is raised. Applicant, you still have the ability to speak.
Oh, great. We just wanted to say thank you so much.
We appreciate your efforts and all the work that went into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll move us on to item 6.5. This is a modified site plan, an application from Marcorr Properties, LLC, for the property at 2200 Coolidge Road to allow the removal of restriction on Sunday sales. And this is Mr. Parcell again.
Yes. Thank you. So this is an application for the Coolidge Court Shopping Center. Brief history. When we went through it the first time, we were under the initial impression that it was a special use permit before Commissioner Wolf brought it up to us. Because of the conditions on it, we wrongly assumed that it was a SUP. It was actually a site plan approval that had these conditions of development that you can see attached in your packet. But this is, I believe, 9-suite shopping center on a 3.3 acre plot of land, the corner of Coolidge and Lake Lansing Roads. It's zoned B5. The applicant is asking that the original condition on the site plan approval for no Sunday hours of operation be permitted in the center be removed. There's no changes to the existing layout, size, or scope of the development on site. A little bit of background is noted in the staff report in the application, but to cover now, there are several times from 1986 that the applicant had come in and attempted to have this removed. In 1987, the client first requested that the city remove the condition, but withdrew their request due to the negative reactions among neighbors and the Planning Commission, which is cited from the city minutes. In 1989, the client requested that the city removes this condition for Sunday hours again. However, the minutes from the 1995 meeting indicated that the Planning Commission split the vote 4-4 and that council ultimately denied the request. And then in 1995, the client requested again to remove the restriction and to add 21 parking places to the approved site plan. This time, the increase in parking was approved, but the request to permit Sunday operations was denied. There's 4 vacancies in the shopping center right now. None of them have, or none of the 5 clients in there have any Sunday hours. And then as shown on the map that Rebecca just shared on the screen is how the area around this subject property has developed into a commercial kind of corridor. With that, I will take questions, comments, and concerns from the Planning Commission.
Questions, comments, and concerns for Mr. Parcell. Commissioner Wolf.
The staff report, excuse me, doesn't mention the deed restrictions that were put into effect. Some of the, I think it was mentioned briefly in the minutes of the 86 meeting. It was raised by the neighbors, and I believe Mr. Brookover, maybe, it was raised in documents from the applicant anyway. But I think we need a a clear statement of exactly what is in the deed restrictions. All I saw in there was the mention of the prohibition on food cooking or baking. But if there's anything else in the deed restrictions, we need to see that as well before or at the next meeting.
Okay.
Or I guess if you could add anything, did you look at the deed restrictions and can tell us anything about them? Or?
I did when I wrote it. I am struggling to locate it right now. I will unmute the applicant, Mr. Brookover, though, briefly to see if he can elaborate more.
Yeah, I was actually prepared to ask him later when they're speaking. I think maybe I'd rather wait for that.
Okay. Yep. I just unmuted him as well. Allowed him to speak. He is muted currently, but he may be more adept to answer.
Well, that's fine if you prefer.
Yes. Yeah, I can't seem to pull it up right now while I'm looking for it.
But I guess I do want to say that I'd like to have them in writing in the staff report before we finish on this next meeting.
Not a problem.
So do you want me to talk or not?
Why don't you go ahead, Mr. Brookover?
Well, just to answer that question,
Thank you.
I thought I quoted it, Mr. Wolf, in the materials I recited, but I have the deed in front of me. It's Liber 1631, page 1202. And this was developed, if you look at the history from the city, between City Attorney McGinty and Mr. Martin's attorney, and is the subject of the minutes. I think some of them you have. In any event, there's a very specific use restriction. It's really the only use restriction, so it doesn't, nothing in this deed impacts on the Sunday hours. So the use restriction is, quote, promisers, that's Martin, agree for themselves and all of their successors or assigns that the property shall not be used for commercial cooking or baking of food for consumption or sale either on or off premises. This shall include, but not be limited to, a prohibition of any, quote, fast food, end quote, type restaurant such as McDonald's or Burger King. And not to get too legalistic, because I probably wouldn't understand it anyway, but the term of restrictions goes until December 31st of 2015, and then they're automatically extended for successive periods of 10 years unless a majority of the then owners of the lots in Ramblewood subdivision vote to the contrary. So before that restriction can ever be removed, there has to be a vote of the occupants of the subdivision.
Okay, so I think you're confirming that that is the only restriction, correct?
Yes, in the deed. Yes, correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wolf, did you have other questions for Mr. Parcell?
I don't have any ready, not at the moment.
Does anybody else have any questions for our comments from Mr. Parcell? I'm sorry, Commissioner Watson, I was looking at my own notes. Please proceed.
Right. I just was wondering what page is that exhibit on? Because I see a map, but mine's not labeled that way. So I would like to get to the labeling. I have trouble seeing from the, Zoom thing.
Exhibit 1. I'm trying to pull it up right now. If Dave or Rebecca can find it sooner than me.
Looks like it's on page 61.
Thank you.
Yeah, anyway, other questions for Mr. Parcell? At least not at this time. All right, then at this point, I'd like to invite the applicants to come forward if they have anything additional to add to Mr. Parcell's presentation.
I do. Am I still muted or not?
Nope, you're good.
Good to go.
Oh, okay. Just a few points. I told my client, I don't know, I may be more effective when you can't see me than when you can see me. But in any event, I just want to point out maybe 6 or 7 things. Of course, many things have changed since 1986. One of them is that I'm 30 years older, and many things have changed since 1996, which is I'm 20 years older. But the most significant things are that during this entire time period, there have been numerous zoning and statutory changes. For instance, and under the current applicable ordinances, we respectfully submit this modification is appropriate for at least the following reasons. First, nothing in the B5 Community Retail Sales District prohibits or limits Sunday hours. Second, no zoning category in East Lansing requires Sunday hours restrictions. Third, the current statutory framework allows modifications to approved site plans, and those are expressly permitted. Fourth, nothing in the current master plan contemplates restrictions on days of operation for businesses. Next, Sunday hours are consistent now with the surrounding commercial properties, and we've given you in our exhibits data to that effect. Next, the modification would not result in a significant change to the site plan. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't result in any real change to the site plan. And then finally, there's this, I've read the comments from the neighborhood, some of the neighborhood people. And let me just say, I think most of you would anticipate that I try to reach out to the neighborhood, which I did beginning last fall. I sent letters to everybody on Rolling Brook and several people on Coolidge Road. And I might just ask or point out that one of the things that happened when this site went in was Rolling Brook. If you look at the map, Rolling Brook used to be a through street to Lake Lansing Road. And as a result of this change, it was made not to be a through street, which I think was a significant advantage for the neighborhood. In any event, there apparently is this straw person about that somehow this is a segue to food. And I guess maybe in a perfect world, if it was conceivable under the deed restriction that there could be a smoothie operation or a coffee operation and the neighborhood was in favor of that, then I guess that's one of the things that might happen in a perfect world. But in no manner, way, shape, or form are we asking for a change in the food or the no food component in the what I'm going to call the companion deed that we've already referred to. So in summary, and I'm just going to point out to the last 2 paragraphs of my submittal, and I do want to clarify, we're asking for Sunday hours from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. That was in a addition that we made. I think staff may not have acknowledged that in their main report. But in any event, since 1986 and even before the current pandemic, substantial changes have occurred in the area surrounding our client's property. That's reality. Zoning and master plans have evolved to allow increased commercial development. The city has passed a citywide rental housing license ordinance, which I believe applies to 3 duplexes, which are on Rolling Brook. I haven't had the opportunity to check that because the city is being closed down. No data exists which would support that there has been a diminution in value to any contiguous neighborhood property since 1986. I submit to you with respect that the taxes assessed against my client since 1986 have been far in excess of what they would have been before this development was put in. The city has also now passed a city income tax, which would be applicable to any tenants or tenants' employees at Coolidge Court. So if we could fill these spots for Sunday that would add to the tax income for the city. And again, based on my review, and I'm willing to be corrected on this, I can find no other similar commercial site in the city of East Lansing which has been denied the right to have Sunday hours. The proposed modification would not result in a significant change to the site plan, and we would be consistent with the controlled growth allowed to occur in the area by the city since 1986. Consequently, we respectfully request approval of this modification to allow Sunday hours of operation between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. Thanks for your time tonight. Thanks for your time in these meetings. And clearly, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer the questions.
Questions for Mr. Brookover?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes. Assuming that you are able to speak for your client, would you be amenable to the other suggestions in exchange? If some Sunday hours were allowed, would you be amenable to the nighttime restrictions on landscaping, on snow plowing, and on trash pickup that have been suggested that would apply 7 days a week?
Well, I'm not authorized to do that, but obviously I have a very serious conversation with my client. I actually think if you go back and look at the prior conditions, some of those conditions are already in there, but I'm not prepared tonight, Tom, to go through chapter and verse on those. So we don't want the neighbors to be disturbed at night. That's never been our intent. And I will readily acknowledge that one time this winter, one of the neighbors who seems to be in opposition to this had an occurrence where I think the snowplow people came early in the morning, and we checked on that, and he was correct, Mr. Roberts. And the reality is we changed snowplow services, and the new snowplow service didn't understand that that was one of the conditions of their contract. So that was rectified as soon as we found out about it.
So your client is not here tonight, is that correct?
Correct. I'm representing my client at this point.
I don't know, at least for the way I feel about this issue, it will be important to get an answer on that because I think that's an appealing solution to the problem. So for the next meeting.
I understand. That can be done.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Brookover? I've got one, Mr. Brookover. It's Dan Bowman.
Yes, sir.
Appreciating that you probably weren't, well, maybe you were. Do you have any sense about what the reason specifically that Sunday was omitted from the days of the week that operations could continue? Was it perhaps to sort of mimic effectively an office use that generally would not be undertaken during a
Well, I didn't represent this organization back then. I have the same things available to me that you do, and I tried to include them. And my recollection of those, but I will stand to be corrected, is that was proposed by one of the neighbors, and Mr. Martin said, yeah, I can do that. So I don't think there was I don't remember seeing any specific rationale about that, other than it was proposed and Mr. Martin said, yeah, I'll do that if you want.
Thanks. Other questions for Mr. Brookover? Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands, so I will thank you for your time, Mr.
Thank
Brookover.
you.
Close. Mr. Purcell, at this time, we'll open up the public hearing for this application and invite the public to come forward.
Yes, sir. Okay, caller with the last three digits, 292. The floor is yours.
Yes, my name is Joseph Reynolds. My wife and I have been homeowners at 2168 Coolidge since 1983. We witnessed the whole process. I have all the minutes from planning commission meetings, city council meetings, and so forth. The reason why there's no Sunday hours is because Mr. Martin was very strong in his determination to get the city council to override the planning commission, to override the overwhelming opposition of the neighborhood, including Tamarest neighborhood, to rezoning those 15 vacant residential lots to B5. So he made these offers. He said verbatim, "I'm going to offer these things so as to give it more of a B4 characteristic." He didn't want to go to B4. He wanted B5, but no Sunday hours was part of that effort to give it a B4 complexion. Now, in terms of snow plowing, it's already in as a restriction in the site plan. I live very close to it. There's been many times over the years when by early morning, if they mean 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, they're plowing with diesel-powered pickup trucks that nobody can sleep through. Having it in the site plan gives leverage to making the snow plower stop. One of the things I've learned with the dumpster issue since that went in is that when they come 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and bounce those dumpsters off the pavement, you're not sleeping through it. Hence, when the developments went on in the Blue Cross development area across the street on Coolidge, the developers were willing to put in the no dumpster thing as a restriction, and that's come in real handy. The ranger did not want to cooperate with McGraw in terms of not coming in the middle of the night. But they had that leverage that it was in there. It was law. It was law in effect. Now, Mr. Brookhover mentioned about all the substantial zoning changes that have happened in this area since 1986. Well, one substantial zoning change that was very much desired by another developer on the old Blue Cross property was to have the portions of the property that run along Coolidge Road rezoned to B5. The city did not allow that to happen. They maintained those properties as B4. I'm just looking at my notes here, but my prepared statement is as follows. I want to make a few comments on the letter that you've received from the applicant's representative. In the portion of May 13th, addendum to application, this would be on page 404 of your PDF packet. On page 404 in the fifth packet, in the fifth paragraph, it states, quote, "The surrounding area centers that have Sunday hours and no vacancies." Now, in addition to Coolidge Court, there's only 2 we might call strip malls where they rent out to various tenants. One of them is Lake Lansing Place at 1595 Lake Lansing Road. It has been advertising a vacancy since March 17th of 2019. That was one day after Art Van's Pure Sleep store finished moving out its merchandise. And that unit is the largest of the 4 units in that building. It's still vacant and it's still on the market. The other center that rents out to various tenants is the Phipps Plaza at 1500 West Lake Lansing Road. In the late summer of 2019, they began to advertise that the Casino Royale coffee shop was going to be vacant soon. There was a big sign in the glass windows of that coffee shop facing Coolidge Road. It's been available for occupancy.
You have
and
1
vacant.
minute left, sir.
Okay. In summary, no Sunday hours were not imposed or denied to the developer. He offered it as a way to get the city council to give him the B5. The Sunday hours restrictions absolutely should not be taken off unless he's willing to show good faith and stick by his promise to give it B4 characteristics by adding a restriction on nighttime dumpster pickup and restriction on how late anything can be open Monday through Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Caller with the last 3 digits, 744. The floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last three digits, 705. The floor is yours.
Pass.
Thank you. Caller with the initials AT. The floor is yours.
Hi, Abby Taikaki again. I apologize for not realizing how public hearings work at the beginning, and
That's
you've
my
already
bad, Ms. Takaki.
but I did want to say that I appreciate Mr. Brookover clarifying that they're not looking to put any food or beverage businesses in the development. But I do want to point out that, as you can see on the map on the screen, this is the only development that butts directly up against a very big neighborhood. And as I said before, the majority of the feedback that I've received from residents is that they are strongly opposed to Sunday hours. So thank you for the Planning Commission's consideration of that.
Thank you. Caller with the initial CJ, I am putting you back to panelist, and the floor will be yours. You may be muted.
Nothing on this matter, thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the initial CH, the floor is yours. CH. CH. Thank you. Caller with the initials JG, the floor is yours. JG. Sorry, we're having some difficulties.
I'm here now, but I have no further comments.
Thank you. And finally, caller with the initials MY, the floor is yours.
Pass, thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair Bowman.
Thank you. Do any members of the commission have any questions for, I guess in this particular case, Mr. Reynolds, whose time expired, or any other applicant, or the applicant, or any other members of the public? Commissioner Sullivan?
It's probably more of a question for staff, but is there really no other, hold it.
And thanks. Let me close the public hearing then. Bring this back to the commission. Thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you. Are there really no other examples of any retail or strip mall businesses prevented from opening on Sunday? It seems like it's such a competitive disadvantage, not only for the owner of the building, but for the retailers that are in the strip.
I searched through this when I was working on the staff report and everything, and I did not see anything else that had a restriction as indicated as that. I just kind of went through some conditions of approval or site plans for other business centers or shopping centers in the city, and I didn't see anything come up that restricted any of their hours of operation on days of the week.
I see some parallels with this strip mall to the one that's on the corner of Abbott and Saginaw there, where there's a neighborhood directly behind it. And as far as trash pickup, snow plowing, anything like that, it seems like that might be a little bit hard for the owner to control. Do you know if there's precedent for other businesses having similar restrictions on snow plowing or garbage pickup late at night?
Personally, in my experience or my looking through everything, and there's been several special use permits that have gone in there in site plan reviews. That particular corner is an example that none of them have had any condition that limited trash pickup or recycling or plowing in any way. Particularly plowing, I feel may be a as needed basis. But yeah, I mean, when we did the special use permit for sidebar in that development, there was nothing related to that came up during my research there.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Wolf?
I actually spent quite a while looking at the zoning map on this issue, and I have some questions for staff to look into, and I think I can also shed some light on it a bit. I looked at both B2 and B5 properties in the city because those are our two main retail zones, and they allow very similar uses. And for the most part, wherever those zones occur, with about 3 or maybe 4 exceptions, they are not next to single family housing. They are buffered from it by either typically a B4 office district or multiple family housing. And the one Mr. Solomon asked about is actually buffered by a B4. The entire post office property runs along the south side of the B2 there. So the B2 is not directly up against the house, what is R1, I suppose. Or, the ones I found that have some similarity, one of them is the development at the point where Grand River and Saginaw meet at Coolidge. That's a B2, and that has restrictions. There was quite a bit of opposition to it when it came in. It backs up to houses R1 along terrain. And council put restrictions on it, and I would like to have that investigated for the next staff report, if you could tell us what those were. And I recall that being kind of a tricky issue where council actually put the restrictions on at their meeting. So I don't think you'll find it in the staff report for that. I think you'd have to go to probably to the letter that was sent to the applicant, or maybe it goes in the file some other way, but I think you won't find the restrictions in the staff report.
What was the location?
I don't know the address. It's the intersection usually referred to as the point, where Saginaw and Grand River and Coolidge. It has a Big B there, and it has Lou and Harry's.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I will take a look.
A second area is picture the intersection of Michigan Avenue and Harrison. On the northwest corner is the Quality Dairy.
Yep.
And if you take a strip going from them up through the building that has Jimmy John's and Domino's, I think it is, that is a B2 that backs up to R2, I think it is, in Chesterfield Hills. And on that one, I don't think it has any restrictions. So that's a place where we have dumpsters right behind people's houses. We have cooking going on. So I'd like to know, indeed, if there are any restrictions on the businesses there. A third one, a very minor one in some ways, I found is or on Hazlitt Road. If you travel east on Hazlitt Road, just before you leave the city limits, there is a small shopping center on the south side that has a veterinary office in it. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Before that, there's a building that has, I think it's the Ruhala Performing Arts. And then there's a dentist's office, and then there's this little shopping center. And I believe that is all zoned B2, and it backs up to R1 properties on Ridgewood. Is that enough of a description of that one? I see Mr. Haywood looking at the map there.
It's immediately west of where Merritt Road comes into Hazlitt Road. It's that Merritt Road.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, it starts approximately across from Deer Path Apartments, actually.
Right, exactly. And there's a Lutheran church. And then west of that is the veterinary clinic building. And then the Ruhala Arts. And I think there's another, or commercial building. I don't know if it's occupied right now. And then there's 8 total.
Yeah, there's a dentist's office in between the little shopping plaza and Ruhala.
Okay, that's the one that I wasn't sure about.
Yeah. And I have a feeling they do not have restrictions either, but I don't know. And again, they I believe have the same situation where they may very well have trash pickup there and the same potential to bother the neighbors to the south. And I have this vague memory. I found a 4th location, but I can't think of what it is right now. I think that's all I have. So I'm asking staff to look into those locations. And
Okay.
Thank you. Vice Chair Boyle, I saw your hand up, and then Commissioner Cahill.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I concur with the comments from Commissioner Wolf. And I think when you look at the record we've been given, and I have some vague recollections of the discussions about this particular development back in 85 and 86. And I think one of the reasons it developed the way it was is because it is, again, a single family residential neighborhood right up against it. And not across the street like from Myers, but backing right up to it. And I think that's where perhaps council came up with the compromise that they did, which may very well have been, apparently it was done with agreement of the developer. But that said, I also would agree with Commissioner Wolf that I would be interested in pursuing the suggestion regarding trash pickup and even possibly snow plowing, if that might resolve this and lift the limitation on Sunday sales.
Thank you. Commissioner Cahill.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on one of the sites Commissioner Wolf brought up, which was on Hazlitt Road, where there's the veterinary operation. I think that was previously a 7-Eleven, or at least one of the buildings there was a 7-Eleven prior to that. So whatever they did there would have even more relevance to what we're discussing at this location. Secondly, and Commissioner Wolf commented on this too, where the sidebar is, we do have the post office, but a little farther to the east, there's the Spine Center. And there's been a lot of friction there. The most recent being over them having a MRI machine trailer that was prohibited in their site plan approval. So I would be interested in what restrictions of any there were at that location, because at that end it does abut residential directly. And finally, I'm thinking that, and I'll wait to hear more information, but it seems to me that the restrictions on operations for every day would be more effective than singling out one of 7 days to have no operation. But I haven't made up my mind about this, but I wonder if the applicant is amenable to some of the suggestions for restrictions regarding the dumpsters and things like that in exchange for approving the 7-day operation.
And it sounded like Mr. Commissioner Wolf had directed that to the applicant's representative here tonight, and it sounds like we'll get an answer for that at our next meeting or in the packet that precedes the next meeting. Anything else, Commissioner Cahill?
No, that's all.
Thanks. And then I saw Commissioner Kusler, Commissioner Sullivan, and Commissioner Wolf. So Commissioner Kusler, please.
Yeah, I just for the record, I wanted to say that I tend to agree with Commissioner Sullivan's initial points about competition. In this case, we are talking about a development that is 35 years old. And when rules were made back then, a lot of the developments around there weren't there. The simple truth is, I believe that we need commerce to continue growing. And I think that it is unfair that we limit Sunday hours in this corner when every other corner doesn't have those restrictions. Every other shopping center in the city of East Lansing doesn't have those restrictions. I feel for the community. I get that, but at the same time, we have spent lots and lots of time trying to commingle residents and commercials in the downtown district. Now we're moving out of downtown and we want to make a strong divide and have no sun. This is counterintuitive. It's backwards thinking. I tend to agree with all of the points that Mr. Brookover made. And I intend to try to push that as we move forward in these conversations. And simply from the fairness factor. I think it's wholly unfair that this corner doesn't get to operate on Sunday when everything else does.
Thanks. Because we'll not actually act on this at this meeting. Your input is certainly well taken, though. Commissioner Sullivan and then Commissioner Wolf.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I think the ideal outcome, if possible, is a compromise between the neighborhood and the owners, and hopefully they can have those discussions between now and the time of the next meeting. I will point out, though, in regards to the hour restrictions, I'm just not familiar with what the specific hours of operations are for those businesses that are in there, but it might be a negative for those that are operating if they are open and good actors in hours outside of what's being proposed, and then they're having restrictions placed on them. I don't know if those hour restrictions would only apply to the vacant retail businesses or to all of the retail businesses, but I think that's a point we should clarify.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, because the hours of operation of the existing businesses were outlined. If I'm not mistaken, they range between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. and that varies. Some of them close at 5, some of them open at 10, but that within the range that at least in the Reynolds letter, it fit within that range currently. Commissioner Wolf.
Yes, back briefly on the Abbott and Saginaw development. It may be hard to believe, Mr. Cahill, the Spine Center is the buffer in that instance. The properties from the gas station over through the end of, the Big Apple Bagel, approximately, that little building is B2. Spine Center is B4 office, the same as the post office. So there's sort of an L-shaped B4 buffer around the B2, which, as you say, did not prevent us from having problems satisfying the neighbors.
Any other questions or requests of staff then? All right, then we will see this at a future meeting. Thank you. Thank you to the applicant. I was doing so well. That'll move us into item 7.1, a site plan and special use permit extension request from JBC LLC for the property at 1415 Michigan Avenue. Mr. Haywood, is this yours?
Hang on 1 second. Okay, so this is just a follow-up to our meeting on the 10th. The applicant's requesting a site plan special use permit extension for the medical marijuana provisioning center at the property. At the last meeting, the property owner asked that the extension be postponed until tonight's meeting. And so we're really just a follow-up item here. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Questions, I see that the applicant is here as well, but questions for Mr. Haywood? Not seeing any hands. So Mr. Parcell, will you please call the applicant forward? See if he has anything to add.
Promoted him to panelist. If there's a second representative, please just let me know.
You know what? Good evening, everyone. This is Chris Jerome. I am the applicant and one of the family member owners. I just wanted to say thank you for your time tonight and say the reason we're here is we're trying to fulfill the promises in the special use permit. You know, when we submitted this, we had something bigger in mind than just being able to attract a tenant to the property. We really wanted to use the privilege of having one of these licenses to clean up the property and really do a corner-to-corner improvement of it in a way we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So we have not faltered in that commitment. It's well over $1 million. We've had some obstacles to try to protect the property from some other activities going on, but we are committed and believe in the value of commerce and tax revenues for the city. So thank you for your support and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Jerome? Then Mr. Haywood, are you, I believe you're looking for a motion to retroactively accept? I see a hand, so I'll stop. Commissioner Kusler?
Yeah, I move to retroactively approve a site plan special use permit extension request from JBC LLC for the property at 1415 Michigan Ave for an additional 12 months until March 26, 21.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Wolf, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Kusler and seconded by Commissioner Wolf to retroactively approve. Goodness, I've lost the text. The site plan and special use permit until March 26, 2021. Is there any discussion on that motion, Commissioner Kusler?
No.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that motion? Seeing no hands. So Mr. Haywood, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Bowman,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Kusler,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Wolf.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So we'll see that again at a future date, presumably. That will bring us on to our last item of old business, item 7.2. This is a modified special use permit. An application for a special use permit from Gateway of East Lansing LLC for the property at 300 West Grand River Avenue to convert first floor retail space to a fitness center for residents and non-residents of the 300 West Grand River Avenue building. Mr. Haywood.
This is
I
mine.
think Jake is going to follow up on this one.
Okay, bad.
Yep.
My bad. Thank you.
Excuse me. Okay. So based on the comments from the Planning Commission on June 10th, the determination was made that the application may be for a modification of the existing special use permit. Conditions of approval at the bottom are here that are representative of the overall development. Again, this is to change the back, what is now vacant retail space into a fitness center, approximately 1,500 square feet. This on the same side of the building is the Big B. The original SUP approval was for 39 units plus a set amount, which I can't find the number right now, or was it 6,434 square feet of non-residential space on the ground floor. This would be a part of that non-residential space. I'm available to take comments, questions, concerns.
Questions for Mr. Parcell? Okay, I'm seeing no hands. I know that the applicant is here. Mr. Parcell, if you'd like to invite him forward, and if there are more than one applicants, please both, all three.
Yes. Chuck Holman, I have given you permission to speak. If there's any other applicants, the caller 705 or 744, please notify me by raising your hand if able, and I can give you permission to speak. I'm just going to allow them and see if either of them are.
That's fine.
Okay. It just told me I'm not muted anymore.
Okay, perfect.
I can hear you.
Yes, I thank you for the opportunity to be before you again tonight. We have submitted a letter. Actually, Mr. Pearson has submitted a letter for us, and it was based on the conversation that took place at the last planning meeting. I think the letter speaks for itself as far as our position, and I will allow Mr. Pearson to speak on our behalf if there are any questions regarding that letter. Thank you.
If I could add something, I guess my concern is with how the modification is presented, because if I understood the discussion at the meeting on the 10th correctly, the reason why it was being considered as a modification was the suggestion that this was converting business space on the first floor to something other than business space, which is not what the applicant intends at all. It doesn't want the space converted to non-business space. The point is, as I explained in my email, this wouldn't be, there's no proposal to create a fitness center for the residents of the 39 apartments at 300 grand. And I might distinguish this from the issues that were a concern with 500 Michigan, which was a proposed space about a third, and for a larger apartment building with more units in it. The only reason this is proposed is because the owners of 300 grand have an opportunity to build out a fitness center where they could contract with owners of other apartments or of office buildings and have it open to their residents or to people who work in those offices. It's intended purely as a business, and if it isn't going to be a business, well, then frankly, they don't propose to go ahead with the operation. They wouldn't build it out for the purpose of simply creating an amenity for that portion of it. We had initially thought that it was permitted because, frankly, in the B1 district, a fitness facility that's in a building with other uses is treated as a personal service establishment. So we took that to be the definition. And I think dating at least from the 500 Michigan application, that staff had looked at it as a recreational use. And so for that reason, that's why the applicant was here the last time, applying for a special use permit, because recreational use requires a special use permit. But again, assuming that it is to be operated as a business. And as I said in my email, you know, if that's to be a condition, it's certainly intended to be exactly that. And if it is something that DTN as a management company working with other owners has done at other places around the state, frankly, in other developments where there may be a desire to build a recreational amenity, but it can't simply be supported by the building itself. So instead, the idea is to turn it into a business where others can assist, or in that sense, make money. It's an opportunity for the owners of the building to turn that into a business and make money on it. The actual structure of it is not certain. It could be that it'll be leased to an entity that would then contract with the other complexes to allow their residents to use it, or it might be Gateway directly contracting with those others. I think there was confusion because everybody simply refers to DTN buildings as though they owned them. And I guess I wanted to make clear, DTN's not the owner of this or any of the other complexes that are involved. It's the management company. It's the one who made the contacts with those other owners of those other buildings. But there are quite a number that don't have these sort of amenities and would like to be able to purchase them so that they would be available to their residents. Be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Pearson? Commissioner Cahill.
I guess I'd like to know, Mr. Pearson, are you saying this shouldn't be subject to site plan approval?
It would be subject only to site plan approval. Well, there's an I'm not sure that it needs a change in the site plan. There's an existing special use permit and a site plan based on, as Mr. Parcells said, 6,434 square feet of business uses on the first floor. And I think that's how it came to you last time.
It sounds to me like you're saying you already have approval for this.
We thought we did, but if staff is correct, based on the precedent of 500 Michigan, this is classified as a recreational use. A recreational use in the B2 requires a special use permit. And that's what you had before you last time.
Okay.
Other questions for Mr. Pearson? Okay, I'm not seeing. Oh, Commissioner Cahill, one more.
Mr. Pearson, you've read the staff report?
Yes.
And are you comfortable with the way the proposed motion would be phrased?
I guess I was happy and comfortable with the way it was phrased on the 10th. My discomfort is if this motion as written by staff is intended to modify the special use permit to build this out as a non-business use, because as you know, and as was discussed last time, the first floor must be primarily business. We think this is a business use, as is the Bigby's, and that both of them should be counted that way. So I guess I would ask staff is if they had intended that the motion and the conditions that they have here are intended to treat this as not a business use, and therefore changing the existing special use permit, which calls for business uses on the first floor.
I think our original intent with a special use permit for it was that Mr. Haywood and I had looked at it and thought that this is a recreational use, which requires a special use permit in the B2 district. But then as we were led to believe this was for use for the residents and for residents of surrounding DTN properties, that would have been an extension of the apartment use as an amenity for the residents, which would have changed the original special use permit, reducing the number of non-residential space on the ground floor, changing it to in an increased of residential space. And I think it just depends on what the proposal actually will be, because in our very initial meeting, it's changed since then even. So if this is operating as its own entity, as a fitness center that is open to the public and people can buy passes at surrounding businesses, etc., then I believe it should be a special use permit application for a recreational use in the B2 district that would fit on the ground floor of 300 West Grand River. And if it's exclusively for residents of DTN managed properties, then it would be a modified special use permit for the ground floor requirements of non-residential space.
And if I may, it is not limited to DTN, and that's a misnomer.
Okay.
DTN is a management company, and who would be contracting to use the space would be the owners of other apartment buildings.
Okay.
So those are the entities that would contract either with the company that leases from Gateway, or they would be directly with Gateway. But in other words, DTN would not be a part of this transaction other than as the management company. They're the ones who act on behalf of the owners to bring this application to you.
Okay.
And so I guess our view is that we don't have to be retail. In other words, in order to be a business, it doesn't have to be open to the public. In order to be a fitness center that operates as a business, it doesn't have to simply offer individual memberships to anyone who wants to join. It can still be a business if it makes money by entering into contracts with other building owners, be they apartments or office buildings, to allow their tenants to use the facilities. And I think that's the distinction we want to make. And, frankly, we'd rather say that, either you disagree with that and refuse it, and then we go to council and try and convince them. But we're not asking the Planning Commission to approve this as a residential amenity. That's not what it's intended, and that's not what we're asking the Planning Commission to approve.
Then if the representative and their council was comfortable with the model recommendation and the motion in the January 10th staff report with the two conditions of approval of required permits for exterior signage and that the project shall be designed and developed in accordance with all applicable state and local statutes, codes, and regulations, then that would be appropriate for that use as argued as such. So if we changed it from a regular SUP to a modified one in between weeks, based off comments at the last meeting, yeah.
And that's why I wrote the email, because when I watched the discussion last time, I was confused. And I could understand how you got to this motion and this report, but we're asking the Planning Commission to consider the motion that was in the packet at the last meeting, and either recommend or disrecommend council approval on that basis.
Mr. Parcell, do you have a copy of that text that you could put on the screen for us?
I can certainly try. I've never shared on here, so bear with me. I don't know. Rebecca, do you know how to do that? Oh,
I
here we go.
believe so. Just tell me where I'm looking for. Where am I going to find what you just said? What was said?
I have it up. There we go. Sorry, it never had to share a screen yet, but there we are. That is the summary comments from the June 10th meeting and conditions of approval.
So this would be subject to the existing site plan for the building at 300 Grand River.
Thank you. Those conditions are identical to conditions 11 and 12 in our current packet, it looks like. Or if not absolutely identical, at least in intent.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair Boyle?
Yes. If we adopt the language from the June 10th report, are we recommending approval of a special use permit for only the space where the fitness center is going to be? That's the way I read it.
Yeah.
That's if I may, that's how we would understand that.
And so it wouldn't alter in any way the existing special use permit for 300 West Grand. It's just a distinct special use permit for this particular business or use.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It would only cover what's shown. I think in your earlier report, you have the the build out plans to show how that would be done within that space.
Where and how?
Yes. Yep.
And by having a special use permit, we meet the requirement that there be one for a recreational use if this in fact constitutes a recreational use, which appears to.
Yes.
Any other questions for staff or for the applicant? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Cahill, please.
Yeah, I have a question regarding 5094, the standards for review, specifically subsection A8, which requires that the proposed use shall be located with direct access to and frontage on a major street as designated in the major street plan. And when you look at this, it doesn't have frontage on Grand River and would seem to have access through the Bigby.
Yes. The frontage of this would be on
Would be on Delta.
Yes, Delta. Sorry.
I believe, isn't Delta designated as a major street?
Does not look like, as far as I can see, that it is.
Okay.
So my concern is the lack of frontage or direct access to Grand River.
Commissioner Boyle has her hand up.
Looking at the floor plan. I'm sorry, Commissioner Boyle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, if we're going to require there to have non-residential use on the first floor of this building, and that's going to be, offices or commercial use, then we can't start nitpicking that the particular part of the first floor isn't on a major street. I think we have to look at it as part of the building, because otherwise it's hard enough to fill the commercial spaces in these buildings. If we're going to say we can't put a commercial space there unless it's on the side of the building that's on a designated major street, everybody's going to pull their hair out. I just don't think that should be a disqualifier here.
The building certainly fronts on Grand River. Mr. Haywood.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing as Chairperson Bowman, that the property has frontage on a major street. Grand River's a major street. It does. Even though the suite might be oriented differently, it's on property that has frontage on a major street, so it does qualify.
Any other questions for the applicant or for staff? Mr. Parcell, would you be so kind as to put that text back up on the screen again, if that's what we're going to go by?
Yep, no problem. Just reading some code. There you go. Can everyone see?
It's up. I think I see Vice Chair Boyle's hand just out of screen. So yeah, there we go. Thank you.
All right, I'll make a motion. I would move that in the matter of the request from Gateway of East Lansing for a special use permit to open a fitness center on the ground floor of the development located at 300 West Grand River Avenue, we recommend to City Council a granting of the special use permit subject to the conditions set forth in the staff report of June 10th, 2020.
Support. Kusler.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Boyle and seconded by Commissioner Kusler to recommend the special use permit as outlined in the staff report of June 10th, 2020. Is there any discussion on that motion? Sorry, I've got to switch views so I can see all of your faces. Hold on, please. There we go. Is there any discussion on that motion? Commissioner Wolf and then Commissioner Kusler.
Yeah, I'm still not completely convinced by Mr. Pearson's arguments that this is anything but an amenity for the residential use. My preference would be to go ahead with the motion as written in tonight's staff report, but I suspect perhaps I'm in a minority here. So, but I'll bring up that opinion anyway.
Thank you, Commissioner Kusler.
Yeah, actually, I was just unfortunately scratching my face, but I'll comment anyway. I will mention just to repeat my comments from the June 10th meeting, and that, contrary to Commissioner Wolf, I do believe that this is a commercial purpose for the reasons I stated then, that this is a draw for other apartment buildings, other office buildings, and for all of the reasons that Mr. Pearson outlined in his letter. So that's why I supported the motion. I'm excited about this.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this one since the last meeting. So I live just a few blocks north of here. I see it's been vacant for a long time. And I think that the clarification on how the contracts are going to work with other not necessarily DTN owned apartment buildings has swayed me into supporting this as well. And with the sign on the front of it, I think that the general public is just going to see a fitness center there too. And I think that's what most people are going to think it is. And I think it's a significant improvement over a vacant space.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Commissioner Wolf.
I will add that in some sense, I will probably be voting in favor of this. I would like to see another use, an additional use. I don't like to see the vacant buildings that we've had. I'm pleased with the fact that they were able to get I don't want to say major, but they were able to get Big B into their space, which I would see as a very desirable tenant. And we have had other commercial residential combination buildings who have not done nearly as well in filling their commercial space. So that's a good thing about this building. So I do have some positive feelings. I still think we are not doing this the right way, however. That's all.
Fair points, all. Any other discussion on the motion? Mr. Haywood, could we please have a roll call vote?
Bowman,
Yes.
Boyle,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Kusler,
Mr. Commissioner Kusler, you are. Thank you.
I finally did it. Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Wolf.
Yes.
The yeses have it, unanimously passes.
Thank you. Again, I'll remind our applicant that this will go before council for their review.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and for your patience.
We thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. That'll move us on to item 8, new business, of which we have none, and then on to item 9, commissioner concerns. Anybody have any concerns? Commissioner Cahill, please, and then Commissioner Watson.
I just wonder, I don't understand how all this works, especially from what Jake's looking at and everything. But it seems like there must be a better way of determining who wants to speak on any individual item.
Yeah.
Going through everyone who apparently is online to speak at some time during the meeting.
Agreed.
Can Jake see someone if we say, raise your hands if you want to speak on this item, or?
I can. I think the problem is I don't know if everybody knows how to do that. I think the most equitable way is to have them all go through, unfortunately. I just would worry that because there's no way they can kind of force their way to talk. If I mute them or don't allow them to talk, then they don't know how to raise their hand. There's no chat or anything. They would just be left.
How could they not know how to raise their hand?
I think, I mean, depending on what device you're on, your phone or your computer, it's in a tricky spot sometimes. I definitely have my struggles with Zoom as I go to.
Oh. So you can't see everyone that's there? If
I can see the attendees, but I can't, if they raise their hand or if they don't know how, they can't identify that they have something to say unless they know how to do it.
Yeah, by the way, Jake, maybe clarify the fact you're talking about raising a virtual hand as opposed to.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. There's a feature on Zoom called Raise Your Hand, and they light up when they do it, and then I can identify that they want to say something. Other than that, it's just a list of names.
And some of them are calling in by telephone, right?
Yeah. Yep. Someone isn't in a panelist, just raised theirs virtually. But yeah, there's telephones and then there's names. It depends how you join the meeting. And I think that some wouldn't be able to let themselves be known as they have something to say unless I have to give them a chance to.
Mr. Haywood. Yep.
I'm sorry. I wonder if we couldn't ask them at the start of the meeting which item they want to speak on. And then you could write down that number and when it comes up, call on them then.
It's definitely a possibility.
Problem is people might join mid meeting.
Yeah. So a lot of people joined after the public comment on that one.
Okay.
Maybe if we could just ask staff to continue looking at possible ways to streamline this whole thing.
We will do our best.
Commissioner Watson, I think I saw your hand. Did I?
Yes. And
then Vice Chair Boyle.
Yeah.
Please, Commissioner Watson, and then Vice Chair Boyle, please.
All right. So I also wanted to say maybe you can ask in the beginning who can raise their hand. And so then maybe it would eliminate some of the people that you'd know who to call on or who not to call on. So anyway, we had a lot of marijuana groups today. And so I have to bring this up, especially during this time where we're just really taking hard looks at dismantling systemic racism. And so we've brought up before the LoRa and the social equity expansion. And so I'm concerned about who's benefiting now and if there's anything that we can do to acknowledge being on this list for LoRa or what other groups are doing to ensure that the groups that were disproportionately affected are able to come into this business. Like there's stuff I read about big marijuana businesses being able to take over too much. And we've got a program that was created. And so I'm concerned because this is my community. And I also like to know like what's going on with that equity program because East Lansing was on the list.
Good point. I'm not sure, is there, was it like a understanding what the intention was? Is there something that staff can undertake to, or I see Commissioner Wolf's hand up. I'm mindful of the fact that Commissioner Boyle had her hand up earlier. This is presumably germane to the topic, Commissioner Wolf, please.
Yes, I just wanted to mention what I described earlier in the meeting in regards to the adult use marijuana. The MRA, the Marijuana Regulatory Agency, sort of tied our hands for the first 3 years or whatever with their decision to only issue adult use licenses to those who already had medical marijuana licenses. And most of those came in before there was the emphasis on helping out the disadvantaged areas. So they came in with with us having no incentives or whatever to promote these for minority businesses and so forth. So then they now become the ones who get the first crack at the adult use licenses also, which just kind of wipes out the idea that we're going to try to help them out. And if you look at East Lansing, we have restricted our licenses so far that we probably have no possibility of adding any more licenses without changing our ordinance. That's a very unfortunate situation created by MRA's decision.
Well, perhaps therein lies a potential solution, and probably not for the immediate future, though, but if the intention is to open up particular additional spots at some point, that perhaps that would have to wait until after this 2021 deadline, or when the restriction is lifted. I don't have the answer either. Commissioner Sullivan, did I see your hand?
Yeah, it's on this topic. No, I agree with Commissioner Watson. I'm glad she brought up the point. I just don't know what role we can play in this. If anybody is interested, there was a committee hearing today that happened at the Capitol. It's archived. You can watch it.
Perhaps it wouldn't hurt for us to at least be mindful of the fact that that this is it's underway, and that the sort of the disadvantaged remain disadvantaged, and if we can sort of be mindful of the fact that there might be ways to find a path when that opportunity does come around, we'd at least be a little bit better aware of it. So, Vice Chair Boyle.
Nothing further.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Wolf.
I have two things. One pretty quick. The other one will take a few minutes. But first one is a question for Mr. Haywood. Since we have these marijuana applications in front of us tonight, I wanted to ask about our 5th approved license at Merritt Road and Park Lake on the former city public works property. Is it not the case that their SUP has expired now? We have not seen a request for an extension from them.
I will have to look up that date. I don't have it handy, and it'd take me just a minute, but if you.
Okay, I actually looked it up, and we are past it. I believe it was in April, but so I think you're confirming that you haven't heard anything from them.
Well, we've heard a little bit from them, but if it's expired, it's expired.
All right. And then I want to bring up another issue that I raised with staff a little bit through email, and I'll try to make this brief. But after our last meeting, I was kind of disturbed about how hard we had to work at talking about 300 West Grand, about how much disagreement we had and trying to figure out how to get that approved. And I was thinking about it after the meeting, and I realized that our last three major apartment buildings, the Hub, the Abbott, and the Landmark, all have fitness centers in them. And when we approved those, there was never an issue of any kind. It was never raised as a special use permit. It was an amenity for the residents, and it was allowed. So I went and looked at the code. Those are in the B3 and the East Village. And in those districts, we have specific, in the list of allowed uses, there's three kinds of uses. There's principal uses allowed, what we call it usually by right. There's principal uses allowed with a special use permit, and there are accessory uses. And in those two districts, if you look in the accessory districts, it specifically lists exercise rooms or fitness centers for a residential use. And that's how those were approved. So it's essentially a use by right. If you have the principal use there already, you're allowed to put that use in. So then I went and looked at the B2 district, which is where we're looking at for 300 West Grand. And I was amazed to see that there are no accessory uses allowed for any reason in the B2. I looked further through the rest of our code. I looked through every district, and I found one other one, the M1, which also allows no accessory uses. Now, M1 is our manufacturing. I think it's only been used in one location. It's a very minor importance. The B2 is a very, very widely used one, and it's quite important to us. I also looked at I looked at all of the zones that allow residential uses. So that would include a couple of the business ones, B2, B3. It also includes the RM14, RM8, RM22, RM32, RM54, and so forth. All of those except one explicitly list a fitness center type of amenity, of accessory use for any residential use there. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm pretty sure we have an unintended flaw in our B2. It just seems crazy, the difference between the way it handles accessory uses. And I think we need to fix that. I know staff is short-handed, so this would probably have to be a long-term goal. But so I wonder if Mr. Hayward has any comment about that.
Yeah, so two comments. I'm glad you bring that up. I've seen that before. I've had the same reaction to it, and it is a long-term effort to get that back into place. We've got a laundry list of things like that, to retool and rethink, and we're always trying to figure out a path forward and to carefully consider things for our community, but make sure that they are also somewhat fluid and customer friendly to people who want to develop and do business. So those things we always weigh. But the other comment I want to make is that 300 West Grand and similarly 500 Michigan are different in the sense that they're not an accessory use. There's something more. And that's why we put them in that category. And if they had been an allowed accessory use and they really only did serve the facility, that could have worked. In the case of Michigan Avenue, it would have eaten up all of the retail space on the first floor, so that couldn't have worked. So each one is a little nuanced and a little bit different in that sense. So, so I think, and maybe we need to look at how we categorize fitness centers like this. Maybe they don't necessarily need a special use permit. I don't know, but maybe that's something we look at in the future too.
I guess I have a slightly different take on 300 West Grand because I think I remember the history. What I seem to recall is when they came in, they were talking about a fitness center just for their residents. I think that's the first thing that they told you. And you looked at it and realized it had to be a recreational use with a special use permit, which they were dismayed about. They were not expecting to have to be required to get a special use permit. And then they started making other changes to it. And what I'm thinking is that if they had come in with this proposal as an amenity for their residents only, and if it had been allowed as an accessory use without the special use permit, they would have jumped at that and built it that way. We never would have needed the special use permit and everybody would have been happy quite a long time ago. Now, obviously I'm speculating about what could have happened, but I think we could have had a faster and better outcome. So I think that's all I have to say, that it would be nice if we could fix that. I understand the shortage of staff. I just hope it doesn't come up as another, causes a problem on some other application that might need an accessory use and is not allowed it because B2 doesn't permit them.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolf. Any questions for Commissioner Wolf? All right, then, if there are no more concerns, Commissioner Cahill.
Quickly, because I know everyone wants to go. I had another thought on what I brought up about all the people waiting in line to speak. I wonder if it would be possible that at the start, we ask the people in line there which item they want to speak on. And if there's a large group of people on one item, could we amend the agenda to bring that forward? Then we take care of all those calls. They'd all leave after that item. And plus we'd be accommodating all the people who've come out for an item that they're the most interested in too.
I think that's an idea worth considering because it would reduce the number of people that get asked, do you have some comment to make? And if everybody leaves. Good point.
They're going to miss all the other good
parts. It's in Robert's Rules of Order or not, but
take that back. Well, yeah, I guess we approved the agenda. Do we have the ability to shift the agenda mid-meeting? Could staff take a look at that? Commissioner Wolf?
Just trying to think of all the possibilities. It could cause a problem if we had an item that was towards the end of the agenda that was one of the more popular ones, had the most callers, and perhaps the applicant decided they didn't need to be here until 7:30 or 8 o'clock or something. If you were to move that up, it could cause them a problem. But just we'll have to think about that.
I suppose we could always put on the agenda with an asterisk or something that the order of items could be changed at the meeting.
All right, any other concerns or comments? In that case, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Commissioner Cahill, so moved.
Wolf, second.
Moved by Commissioner Cahill and seconded by Commissioner Wolf to adjourn our meeting. I'll call for a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed. We are adjourned at 10 o'clock p.m.
Thanks, guys. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Right.
Good night.